From a young age, I found peace in the endless stretch of open highways. As a teen, I spent my afternoons working in my uncle's auto shop, where I got my hands dirty learning how engines tick and how rewarding it feels to bring a dead machine back to life. Right after high school, I earned my CDL, not just for a paycheck, but for the freedom and self-reliance that trucking promised. For years, I roamed coast to coast, meeting all kinds of people, from warm-hearted locals in tiny towns to strangers navigating the chaos of big cities. One summer, while hauling hay out to a remote corner of Nebraska, I ran into a family wrestling with a dried-up well. I didn't hesitate. I jumped in, piecing together a temporary fix that kept their water flowing until a crew could arrive. That day stuck with me. It was a reminder that small acts can leave a lasting impact on someone else's life. Tessa and I? That started like a movie. We met in a greasy spoon diner during one of my layovers, and her sharp humor and bright laugh pulled me in fast. Within 6 months, we were saying I do, both of us filled with high hopes for a future built on trust and shared ambition. But little by little, cracks began to show, quiet at first, but impossible to ignore. On one especially brutal run, I stopped to help a fellow trucker whose rig had flipped in a sudden storm. While we waited for the tow crew, we shared soggy sandwiches and stories. He opened up about his own crumbling marriage. His words kept echoing in my mind for weeks, forcing me to take a hard look at my relationship with Tessa, wondering if what we had was really as solid as I once thought. Through it all, my daughters, Chloe and Sophie, were the steady point in my life. Even when long hauls kept me gone for days or weeks, hearing their voices each night gave me purpose. I longed for a life where I could be more present, more than just the voice on the other end of the phone. But with bills piling up and mouths to feed, I had no choice but to keep rolling down those highways. Then came a trip through Texas that changed everything. I was delivering medical supplies and happened upon a tight-knit farming community desperate to save their land from foreclosure. What started as a simple phone call soon grew into something much bigger, a partnership that eventually led to the creation of an entire village. That one decision sparked a series of highs and lows that would go on to shape my entire future. Roughly 5 years back, a twist of fate led me to start what's now known as Circumstances, a bustling settlement I never planned but now proudly call a legacy. Today, it's home to 349 folks, a full-fledged community born from what was supposed to be just another delivery run. It all kicked off pretty suddenly. After dropping off a load of specialty bandages in Texas, I got assigned a route that meant I'd be home earlier than expected. Because of my clearance to handle sensitive cargo, I was one of the few drivers qualified for the job. The pickup was nearby, and the drop-off was barely an hour from home. Perfect. I decided to take an alternate route, which shaved hours off my trip. That detour turned out to be the gateway to something far bigger than I'd imagined. While passing a rural intersection, I noticed a hand-painted sign, "Land for Sale." Curious, I followed it and wound up at a modest farmhouse. An elderly couple was struggling to keep up with skyrocketing property taxes and were desperate to sell off a piece of their land just to hold onto the rest. I gave my dad a call, and we agreed to buy the land at fair market value using our family trust. We arranged for the couple to stay on as long-term tenants at a rent they could actually afford. They were incredibly thankful and eager to pitch in however they could. We took 10 acres at the crossroads and started building a gas station with a small convenience store, an obvious move, given the nearest town was over an hour away. I also encouraged my dad to grab the land surrounding all 4 corners of the intersection. He managed to lock down 10 acres at each one. While surveying the area, we struck gold, an underground river capable of supplying water to tens of thousands. That single discovery opened the door for future development on a much larger scale. Even after squeezing in another rush job, I still made it home on time. 6 months later, following a grueling 16-day haul that included a nasty breakdown, I wrapped up early one Wednesday morning, 12 hours ahead of schedule, and parked my rig at the company yard. Waiting for me were the keys to my fully restored Ford pickup. While I was out, it had undergone a full transformation. I rebuilt the frame and body, hired a local shop for a sleek new paint job, and got a brand new engine installed at Jameson's Auto. What was once a faded red truck was now a glossy black beauty, chrome details shining, and the tailgate freshly adorned with that bold Ford emblem. It looked brand new, pristine enough to earn collector plates. That evening, I made it home just in time for dinner, hoping to enjoy a peaceful night with Tessa and the girls. After being on the road for over 2 weeks, I couldn't wait to surprise her before her 9 a.m. shift. But as I neared our street around 8 a.m., excitement gave way to suspicion. There it was, Zane Holloway's truck, sitting in my driveway like it belonged there. Zane, my boss's son and occasional co-driver, had a reputation for being a loudmouth and a constant headache. I parked a few houses down, hidden in plain sight, and watched as the pieces fell into place. My heart sank as I saw Tessa and Zane stroll out of the house with my daughters in tow. Zane had his rig bag slung over his shoulder, and it was obvious they were all heading out after missing the bus. But before they got into the car, Tessa and Zane shared a hug, one that was way too close for comfort. That wasn't just a friendly goodbye. This had been going on for a while. No doubt in my mind. I caught the whole thing on video. They didn't even glance in my direction. My truck looked completely different now, and they had no idea I was watching. Once they pulled away, I drove up to the house to see if anything felt off. At first glance, everything seemed normal. Daughter's rooms untouched, the master bedroom still in perfect order. But something about the neatness, especially the perfectly made bed, didn't sit right with me. Something told me I needed to dig deeper. I scoured the house, room by room, from the basement up, but nothing seemed out of place until I caught a faint light glowing under the door to the attic. That space was usually unfinished and dark, a place we never touched. Curious, I climbed the stairs and opened the door, only to be hit with something I didn't expect. The attic had been completely remodeled. Sunlight poured through large windows, revealing a luxury master suite. King-sized bed, walk-in closets, plush seating with a TV, even a sleek en-suite bathroom. None of this had ever been mentioned to me. Not one word. As I stepped inside, the details hit harder. On a small table were adult DVDs, the kind Tessa used to scold me for even glancing at. I popped one into the player, driven more by dread than curiosity. And there she was, Tessa, doing things she'd always refused. Enthusiastic, engaged. The very acts she once called disgusting, she now did with ease. It was gut-wrenching. Then I saw it. On the coffee table, a handmade card. "We love you, Uncle Zane," signed by my daughters. That moment was a punch to the chest. Zane wasn't just her affair, he was embedded in my family. He was in my home, living in a space I hadn't even known existed. I took it all in, the bed still messy, unfamiliar lingerie tossed on a chair, and that undeniable scent of recent intimacy hanging in the air. The walk-in closet confirmed everything. One side full of Tessa's risque outfits I'd never seen her wear, the other stacked with oversized shirts and jeans that clearly belonged to Zane. I began filming. Every inch. The clothes, the DVDs, the family photo of Zane with his parents on the nightstand. It all went into the evidence folder. I stood before the mirror, holding up one of Zane's shirts. It practically swallowed me, making it crystal clear it wasn't mine. Then I recorded the DVD itself. Tessa and Zane, intimate, exposed. His face, unmistakable. Her betrayal, undeniable. Once the recording was saved, I packed my suitcase in silence. I returned upstairs, grabbed the disc, and slipped it into my bag. I left everything else exactly as I found it, just with a suitcase by the door. My next move was to call my father. I needed an update on our gas station project. He told me construction was going smoothly, especially the apartment above the store, which now had 3 bedrooms. Even better, we'd secured a franchise agreement, which would be a major win once we opened. "How long before it's ready?" I asked. 10 weeks, maybe less, he said. "Good," I told him. "I'll move in and run the store. Also, I need a solid civil attorney and a damn good divorce lawyer." He didn't ask questions, just told me he'd take care of it. I then called the farmer who had sold us the land and asked if he had a spare room I could crash in until the apartment was ready. He didn't even hesitate. Offered me a place free of charge and reminded me how grateful he was for what we'd done for his family. I told him I'd be there the next day. That same morning, I headed to my boss's office, Grant Holloway's. I walked in and quit, no fanfare. Naturally, he asked why. I showed him. First, I played a video of the remodeled attic suite. His eyes narrowed when he saw the framed photo of himself and his family, his son Zane included, sitting proudly on a shelf. "Where is this?" he asked, tense. "My house," I said. That space wasn't supposed to be touched. Then I showed him a short clip from the disc. Zane and Tessa. Together. No questions left unanswered. Grant's face paled. A man who built his life on religion and moral values suddenly found himself staring at his son in someone else's marriage bed. "That's my wife," I said calmly. "And that's why I'm leaving. I've got a custody battle ahead of me, and I need to be ready." He didn't wait. picked up the phone, told his accountant to issue my final paycheck and tack on a $10,000 bonus. "This is for the pain my son's caused," he said, shaking his head. "Are you sure the girls aren't his?" "Absolutely," I replied. "It's been going on a while, but not that long." He still encouraged a DNA test, but I told him Zane could ask for one if he had doubts. Then I asked him to keep what I'd shown him confidential. I wanted Tessa to find out on her own, without warning. Grant sat quietly for a few moments. "I'm ashamed," he said. "I've heard whispers before about Zane and married women, but this is disgusting." True to his word, he fired Zane as soon as he got back and cut him out of the family inheritance. Zane's betrayal wasn't just personal, it was disgraceful, and Grant refused to carry the shame for him. That afternoon, I went to the bank, cashed my final check, cleaned out the joint accounts, and paid the auto shop for the work on my truck. Then I made one of the hardest stops of the day, my daughter's school. I arranged to speak with them in front of a guidance counselor. I wanted to make sure everything I said would be understood in the right context. That's when I found out the full scope of it. Zane had been living in our home for 3 years. Tessa introduced him to the girls as some distant cousin. Over time, he became a regular part of their routine. Eventually, she told them to start calling him Uncle Zane. That was my breaking point. I sat my daughters down and told them the truth. Zane wasn't family, he was their mother's lover. I explained the divorce and that, for now, they'd stay with Tessa until I could provide a stable home and start the custody process. The counselor backed me up completely. She handed me her card and said, "Have your attorney contact me. I'll make a statement. Too many fathers lose their children in situations like mine, punished not for what they did, but for what they couldn't control." I hugged my daughters tightly before they went back to class, feeling a deep sense of purpose take root. No matter how long it took, I would build a life they'd be proud to return to. Before heading back to the house, I made one quick stop, a local flower shop. I walked in and asked the clerk for the oldest, ugliest flowers they had. She looked confused, but after a moment, brought out a wilted, browning batch from the trash. I asked her to box them up. She didn't ask questions. Back at the house, I placed the box of dead flowers right on the freshly made master bed. Beside it, I laid out the card my daughters had signed for Uncle Zane. Then, for the final touch, I added a piece of Tessa's baby doll lingerie, shredded and sliced apart with her own sewing scissors. After that, I packed up my tools into the truck, covering them with a tarp. I had no idea when I'd be back, and I wasn't about to leave anything behind. While I worked, my neighbor Mike strolled over. "So," he said casually, "I guess you finally found out about Tessa's second husband?" "Second husband?" I blinked. "That's what we called him. Zane's been around for years." I nodded slowly. "Yeah, I just learned today." He looked at me with genuine sympathy. "Well, I'm sorry, man. That's rough." I explained the basics. I'd quit my job. I was preparing for a custody fight, and I had a place to stay lined up. Mike offered to let me hide my truck in his garage and suggested I stick around to see how the evening unfolded. I agreed and moved the truck into his garage. That night, from Mike's garage window, I watched Tessa pull into the driveway. She looked calm, unaware, carrying on as if the life she'd carefully hidden was still intact. She headed straight into the bedroom. At first, her expression brightened. She probably thought the box was a surprise gift from Zane. She picked up the card, glanced at it, then reached for the lingerie. Her smile faltered. That's when the confusion started to creep in. Then she opened the box. The smell hit her immediately. She reeled back, clearly disgusted and bewildered. It didn't seem to dawn on her that I was behind it. If anything, she likely thought it was Zane's twisted way of ending things. But this was just the start. I had more planned. Soon after, I got a text from Sophie. "Call us, but don't say anything. We want you to hear what we're about to tell Mom. She needs to hear the truth from us." I showed Mike the message and explained the plan. "I'll put the call on speaker. We just need to stay quiet and listen," I told him. From the garage, we watched as my daughters stepped off the school bus and walked straight into the house. They went to the bedroom, where Tessa was still sitting, visibly unsettled by the day's earlier discoveries. "Hi, Mom," Chloe said casually, as if it were any other day. "Dad called us out of class," she continued. "He said he needed to talk privately." Tessa stiffened, her posture rigid with uncertainty. "He met us in Miss Shaw's office," Sophie added. "We didn't know why, especially since you told us he wouldn't be home until 6. He asked the counselor to stay while we talked," Chloe said. "First thing he asked was, who is Uncle Zane, and how long has he been staying with you?" Sophie continued. Tessa's expression changed instantly. Fear, realization, shame, it all hit her at once. She finally understood who had left the box, the shredded lingerie, the flowers. The walls were caving in. Chloe took over. We told him you said Zane was a distant cousin who moved back to town, and that the third floor was supposed to be a surprise renovation, Sophie added. But now we know that wasn't true. We kept your secret like you asked, Chloe said sharply. And wow, was it a surprise for Dad. He didn't even know you remodeled the attic, Sophie went on. He found out today when he saw everything with his own eyes. Tessa sat frozen. No rebuttal. No defense. Just tears. You always told us not to lie, Mom, Chloe said. But now we see it's okay when you lie. To Dad. To us. To everyone. She started crying, her body trembling as the truth poured from her daughter's mouths. Dad didn't know Zane was living upstairs for 3 years, Sophie continued. He thought you both shared a bed while he was home. But we knew you didn't, Chloe said. Because the bed was never messed up in the mornings when he was gone. You never even touched it. It was small, but telling. The same woman who insisted they make their beds every day had been outed by that very detail. We never saw anything happen between you and Zane, Sophie said gently, but we did see you coming down from the attic when Dad wasn't home. Dad told us you, and here getting divorced, Chloe added, her voice clear and steady. Because Zane isn't family. He's your lover, the man you've been hiding for years. She paused, then said, Dad told us you've been using him. Supporting Zane with the money he worked hard to earn. Not for the good of our family, but for yourself. And that made him feel like his whole life with you was a lie, Sophie added quietly. He also said he quit his job today, Chloe said. And now he's looking for work closer to home, so he can fight for custody. Miss Shaw told us the courts won't consider giving custody to a long-haul trucker, Sophie said. So he had no choice. When he left, we went back to class, Chloe added, but it was hard to focus. Tessa didn't say a word. Her tears flowed, her shoulders hunched. Everything was crashing in. And it wasn't coming from me, it was coming from the girl she raised. She knew how custody cases worked. As a social worker, she understood the optics better than anyone. And right now, she looked like a mother exposed. She had taught them how to lie to protect herself. But in the end, the truth came out from the mouths of her own children. And this was just the beginning of the reckoning. Eventually, we just broke down in class, Chloe said softly. Miss Shaw had to pull us out for the rest of the day to calm us down and talk things through. We learned something new today, Mom, Sophie added, her voice sharp. Sleeping with another man while you're married? That's called infidelity. Miss Shaw said it's the deepest betrayal one spouse can inflict on another. If that had mattered to you, Chloe said coldly, we wouldn't even be having this conversation. She also asked how you ever thought you could live with 2 husbands and not expect anyone to notice, Sophie continued, her words slicing straight through Tessa's silence. Tessa mumbled something under her breath, barely audible. Maybe she was trying to rationalize things, telling herself that Dylan was her husband and Zane was just a side relationship, but even she couldn't deny that. To everyone else, it looked like she'd been living a lie. Then Sophie delivered the crushing blow. Chloe and I talked. We think you must not only hate Dad, but probably hate us, too. That's the only way we can make sense of what you've done. Chloe followed immediately, her voice razor-sharp. Miss Shaw said no one who truly loves or respects their partner would ever treat them like you treated Dad. She called it beyond cruel. Tessa's sobs grew louder. Her shoulders shook under the weight of everything her daughters were forcing her to confront. They weren't yelling. They weren't emotional. They were calm, direct, and brutally honest. Before we got on the bus, Chloe continued, Miss Shaw asked if we wanted her to drive us home. We said no. We needed time to talk. Sophie added, she also said she's willing to testify if this ever goes to court. She's seen too many men destroyed by lies like this. She said she has a duty to speak up. We whispered on the bus the whole way back, Chloe said. We've made up our minds. Tessa sat frozen on the edge of the bed, face buried in her hands, her world collapsing around her. Mom, Sophie said firmly, we may only be 12, but we've already checked. When we turn 13, we can legally choose who we want to live with. And we've already chosen, she added. We're going to live with Dad. We're going downstairs to call Grandma, Sophie said without missing a beat. She and Grandpa will come get us. We'll stay with them until Dad has everything ready. You and Zane can have the whole house to yourselves. She turned to Chloe. Let's go pack. Before leaving, Chloe stopped in the doorway and looked back. One last thing, Mom. Were you trying to get us to bond with Uncle Zane so it'd be easier to replace Dad without us knowing? Her voice was steady, but cutting. Because that's exactly what it feels like. Tessa didn't answer. She couldn't. She sat motionless, tears streaking down her face, as her daughters walked away. They'd inherited my way of looking at the world, calm, logical, no sugarcoating. They'd taken in the facts, processed them, and made their own decisions. I sent Tessa a text. "What you found on the bed?" That was from me. "Let your so-called common-law husband know I'll be suing him for support. For you and the girls." I raised the binoculars and watched from the garage. It took her a moment, but as she read the message, you could see it click. She realized I wasn't bluffing. Everything, the evidence, the testimony, the truth was going to court. And she knew what that meant. She would lose the girls. And Zane? He'd go down with her. Mike and I kept an eye on the time. 15 minutes later, her parents arrived. Mike cracked the garage door slightly, just enough to hear the voices carry from across the street. It didn't take long. Tessa's mother was livid, shouting as she led the girls out the front door. But it was her father who delivered the knockout punch. "Well," he said with ice in his voice, "now that you've driven Dylan away, I guess once things fall apart with Zane, you'll just find another trucker to replace him." He didn't stop there. "Zane doesn't respect you. Clearly, he's fine with sharing you. And you've shown us that one man will never be enough for you anyway." From where we stood, we could see Tessa collapse under her father's words. Her legs buckled, and she dropped to the floor, sobbing. Her mother wasn't finished. "We're contacting child services tomorrow. Your daughters called us for help. They explained why they wanted out. And for the first time in a while, we were proud. They've been raised right," she added, her voice colder now. "Sadly, we can't say the same about you." Mike slowly closed the garage door and walked into his kitchen. He came back with 2 beers and handed me one. "Your daughters nailed it, Dylan," he said, shaking his head in admiration. "You should be proud." "I am," I said simply. Mike sat down. "You know, when the crew was working on the house, Tessa told all the neighbors that the 3rd floor was a rental unit. She said you were bringing in extra income." I almost laughed. "That's a complete lie. The house was paid off. I remodeled every floor myself just because I had the time. We didn't need any extra money." "So she's been lying from the start," Mike muttered. He paused, then asked, "Where do you think the money for that remodel came from?" "Not me," I said firmly. "I never saw a dime from that so-called rental. My guess? Zane paid for it using his trust fund and reimbursed himself later." I pulled out my phone, brought up Tessa's contact, and looked at Mike. "Let me know when you see her again. I want to send a message and watch how she reacts." A couple minutes passed. Mike peeked through the curtain and gave me the signal. "She's back in the bedroom. Looks like she's trying to pull herself together." I typed out a short, blunt message and hit send. "Hey, to the Queen of Open Invitations. Grant Holloway and I both have a question. After your long-term relationship with his son, are Chloe and Sophie mine, or Zane's? Grant says he's filing to find out." That was the text I sent to Tessa. Mike was watching from the window and saw the reaction before I even asked. "Oh my God," he said, eyes wide. "She just hurled her phone into the wall." He peeked again. "Now she's on the bed, sobbing like she's lost her mind." He turned to me with a crooked smile. "What the hell did you send her?" "Just the truth," I said calmly. Grant had told me he'd been hearing whispers for years, rumors about Zane being tangled up with a married woman. The husband had no clue. It was time we all asked the question that had been simmering too long. Mike's face paled a little. He knew Grant well enough to understand. Once that man went looking for answers, he wouldn't stop until he got them. About half an hour later, I asked Mike to check on her again. "She's on the couch now. Looks like she's still trying to process everything." So I sent her one last message. A 5-minute video clip, explicit, unmistakable. It ended with Zane's face in full view. Alongside it, I added a single line. "Who filmed this?" And then a follow-up. I took the disc. Maybe I'll figure it out when I watch the rest. A few minutes passed before Mike walked back in, stunned. "She's throwing up. All over the living room rug. I mean, well." He didn't even ask what I'd said that time. He didn't want to know. At 5 a.m., I hit the road. Before leaving town, I queued up 2 videos and sent them to every contact we shared, family, friends, enemies, coworkers. All of them. The message attached said, "This is what I showed Grant Holloway when he asked why I had to quit my job." The second video? It was shot in the same bedroom, but from a different angle, someone else behind the camera. I added, "Neighbors say Zane Holloway is Tessa's second husband. Tessa told them I was fine with the setup. That's a lie. I found out yesterday. I'm filing for divorce and suing Zane Holloway. By sunrise, A whole lot of people were going to have a very unpleasant morning. I stopped at a truck stop on the edge of town, ordered a proper trucker's breakfast, eggs, bacon, biscuits, and gravy. I sat by the window, watching my freshly restored truck gleam under the early light. That's when Leah, Tessa's younger sister, walked in. She spotted me right away. "Dylan," she said gently, "I'm so sorry. No man deserves what you're going through. Mind if I sit?" I nodded, and she slid into the booth across from me. We sat in silence for a moment while I sipped my coffee. "Mom and Dad told me everything last night," she finally said. "The girls filled them in after they got to the house. This hit all of us like a truck." She hesitated. "If you ever change your number, please let us know. We'll keep it from Tessa." I smiled faintly. No plans to change it. I was going to quit in a couple of months anyway. The girls are getting older. I wanted to be home more as they step into their teen years. Leah's jaw tightened. What the hell was Tessa thinking? There's no way you'd ever be okay with her having a second husband. That's not you. We may never know, I said quietly. Maybe it started out innocent. Or maybe she's been hiding this side of herself the whole time. Either way, she clearly enjoyed the arrangement. And it's been going on longer than we thought. Leah's brows knit together. Longer than 3 years? When I told Grant what was going on, he said he'd heard rumors, years ago, about Zane sleeping with a married woman. He asked if Chloe and Sophie might actually be Zane's. Her face drained of color. God. Who else knows? I pulled out my phone and showed her the text I'd sent Tessa the night before. Then I handed her the message I sent that morning along with the videos. She scrolled slowly. Tears welled up in her eyes. She already knew things were bad. But now? She could see they were far worse. It's not just the affair, I said. That video, someone else was in the room. It wasn't just them. Leah looked shaken. By the end of the day, everyone's going to know, aren't they? They already do, I said. Grant is going public. We don't know the truth yet. Maybe both girls are mine. Maybe neither. But now, even that's in question. I looked down, blinking back my own tears. She slid over to my side of the booth and quietly took my hand. We sat there like that, not saying a word, until the waitress came to take our order. When the food arrived, I let go of her hand and started eating, silently grateful for the comfort she offered. Leah watched me for a moment. Her mind was somewhere else, years back, when I'd first married her sister. Dylan and Tessa had tied the knot at 19. Leah had been the youngest bridesmaid, standing quietly in awe. Even back then, she thought I was the most decent, grounded man she'd ever met. That feeling hadn't changed. I'd worked long hours behind the wheel so Tessa could finish school. When she graduated, she chose a job in our hometown. At the time, Leah didn't understand why she hadn't picked something further or more exciting. Now she knew. Tessa had wanted to stay close to Zane, her first love, despite her parents' disapproval. It all made sense now. Leah looked at me, torn between sadness and something else, something deeper. She'd always leaned on me for perspective. I helped her through life's messes. I could make chaos feel manageable. And for years, no man ever measured up to me in her eyes. Now, with everything shattered, she quietly made a promise to herself. When the time was right, she would tell me how she felt. Because now she truly believed it. Tessa had married the wrong sister. "Dylan," she said softly, breaking the silence. "Do you know where you'll be staying?" "Not yet. I'm heading to the apartment above the store once it's finished." She nodded. "Good. Because Chloe and Sophie told Mom and Dad they want to live with you. They're hurt and angry," Leah said. "But more than anything, they're proud of you." She looked at me with a softness I hadn't seen in a while. "They told Mom and Dad they're ready to tell the court themselves. They want to live with you." She paused, then offered, "Until the custody hearing, I can bring them out to you on the weekends, if that works." I nodded and pulled out my notepad, handing her the address. "My dad and I are building a gas station and convenience store not far from here. I'm staying with the farmer who rents the land until the apartment above the store is ready." Leah looked confused. "Why all the way out there?" I explained. "We own 10 acres on each corner of the intersection. Once the store is up, we're subdividing the surrounding land into lots. There's nothing else nearby. It's a perfect location for locals and travelers." She tilted her head. "How do you even find it?" "Cutting across the country," I replied. "Tried to save some time. Ended up at a 4-way stop with a hand-painted sign. The traffic pattern told me everything I needed to know. It could support a business." She nodded slowly, seeing the logic. That was always something she appreciated about me. I thought things through. The conversation drifted to lighter topics after that, but the weight of everything we'd gone through still lingered. There was a quiet understanding between us that didn't need to be spoken. When breakfast was finished, I picked up the check. Leah leaned over and kissed me on the cheek, just like she always used to. "Dylan," she said gently, "there are a lot of people who've always loved you. Not for what you do, but for the kind of man you are. Don't ever forget that." Her words stayed with me the whole drive out to the site. I called my dad on the way and updated him on everything. Without skipping a beat, he said he'd start looking for the best divorce attorney we could afford. The drive was about 75 miles, and by the time I pulled into the construction site, it was just after 8:30 a.m. I couldn't help but smile. My dad wasn't holding back. 8 fuel pumps, 6 for cars and smaller trucks, 2 for big rigs. The foundation for the spill containment system was already poured, and the frame of the building was rising fast. Inside the construction trailer, I looked over the plans. The layout was familiar. It resembled Dad's other projects, but this one had a spacious 2,400 square foot apartment above the store. He saw the potential here, and I appreciated that more than I could say. After spending a few hours on site, I headed to the farm. Cal Whitaker was already outside when I arrived, giving my truck a once-over. "Now that's a truck," he said with a grin. "They used to build these things to last." I laughed, and as I parked, his wife, who I now knew as Nora, called us in for lunch. She made a big country meal, the kind that sticks with you, and teased me the whole time for how much I ate. Afterward, I helped her clean up, drying dishes while she put away leftovers. She noticed my bare ring finger, but said nothing. Once we were done, she brewed a fresh pot of coffee, and the three of us sat together while I told them the story, everything from the discovery to the fallout. They listened, no interruptions, just kindness and quiet support. "We'd be happy to have the girls and Leah anytime," Cal said. "House could use some youthful energy again. Plus, I need an excuse to fire up the grill." I texted Leah later and invited her and the girls to visit every Friday through Sunday. She replied almost immediately, "It's a date." That afternoon, I sat down with my laptop and reviewed the disc. Unfortunately, the video didn't show anyone besides Tessa and Zane. No other faces. Still, I uploaded everything to a secure drive and sent it to my father, along with Miss Shaw's contact info. I asked him to coordinate with Grant Holloway and serve Zane as soon as they found him. Tessa would be served at her office in town. For good measure, I texted Tessa. "I've seen the entire video. Let's just say, it's far from award-winning. I've seen better acting in high school drama class. Spiteful? Maybe. But after everything, I couldn't bring myself to care." By the time school let out, Leah and the girls were on the road. Thankfully, Leah's work as a tax specialist was in its slow season, giving her the time to make the drive. The girls texted me constantly, every 10 or 15 minutes, sending updates like excited reporters. Before I knew it, they texted from the driveway. "We're here." They burst out of the car and ran straight into my arms. Cal and Nora welcomed everyone like family. The girls were thrilled with the guest room Nora had prepared, cozy, bright, and just for them. While Nora finished dinner, Cal gave the girls a tour of the farm, swing set, a swimming pond, and even a couple of mini motorcycles. He told them they could ride with my permission, and their faces lit up. After dinner, we all helped clean the kitchen. The girls washed dishes while Nora handled the leftovers. Cal kept them entertained with farm stories, promising them a packed weekend of fun. Once the kids were tucked into bed, Leah and I sat down together, finally able to talk without interruption. "Dylan," she said softly, her voice tight with emotion. "These past few days, it's been chaos." She looked away for a moment, then back at me. "Zane's been in her life longer than any of us realized. He's the boy Tessa used to sneak out to see when we were kids." I nodded. The final puzzle piece. It all makes sense now. I was the safe one, the stable one. Zane was the chaos she craved. He took full advantage of it. "And he'll disappear once this blows up," Leah added bitterly. "Tessa will be left with nothing." She sighed. "Mom and Dad already spoke to child services. If you give written permission, the girls can stay with them temporarily. They've already interviewed the girls, and there's no chance Tessa gets custody. Her lifestyle disqualifies her completely." Her words sank in, and suddenly I couldn't hold back. Tears spilled down my face before I even knew they were coming. I tried to speak, tried to ask her to leave so I could process everything alone, but she refused. She stayed right there, holding my hand. Across town, Tessa sat alone at the kitchen table, staring into space. Thursday had passed in a blur, but Friday had hit her like a tidal wave. Her secrets were out. Her parents, her daughters, her sister, everyone had turned on her. She had no idea that her world, built on manipulation and half-truths, was unraveling with every hour. At work, Tessa was blindsided. She just settled in at her desk when a man in a suit stepped in and served her with legal papers. Grant Holloway was suing to determine if he was biologically related to her daughters. And for the first time in years, Tessa had to admit the truth, even she didn't know for sure. It had been so long since the girls were conceived that the timeline had grown fuzzy. Too many blurred lines, too many secrets buried under years of deception. She had underestimated me. At first, she brushed off my warnings as emotional threats, angry words from a hurt husband. But the text I'd sent to everyone, family, friends, coworkers, had changed everything. It was clear, brutal, and irreversible. Her attorney explained the fallout in plain terms. By moving Zane into the house and living as if they were a couple, he legally qualified as her common-law partner. That made my lawsuit against Zane not only valid, but likely successful. The only thing left to determine now was how much Zane would owe. Worse, her attorney told her the court would view me as the sympathetic party. Years of steady employment, loyalty, fatherhood, and sacrifice, stacked against a woman who had spent years lying to everyone, including her children. Tessa had lost every advantage. And for the first time, she realized it. If she could have shown that Zane had been contributing financially, bank transfers, rent payments, anything, it might have helped. But there was nothing. No records. No paper trail. To the court, Zane looked like a freeloader, a kept man leeching off a family he didn't belong to. The worst blow came later that day when her supervisor called her into the office. The tone was clipped, professional, but ice-cold. "Tessa, I'm aware that you visited Mr. and Mrs. Frank Caldwell after hours on Thursday in connection to a custody issue. They told me everything. They asked the state for guidance." Her stomach dropped. "I also spoke with the children, and I advised their grandparents that if they obtained written consent from the father, the state would acknowledge them as temporary custodians until the court rules otherwise." She paused, then added, "Yes, I know they're your parents." Tessa felt her whole body go numb. "I can't terminate you," her supervisor went on, "but I can't keep you where you are, either. As soon as a transfer opens up, you'll be moved. Effective immediately, your entire caseload is reassigned. You'll remain in office-only duties until further notice." Her voice softened just a little. "Tessa, your professional reputation in this area is over. No one will trust your judgment again." There was no defense left. Tessa sat in silence, the consequences of her pursuit of Zane finally catching up. And there was no one to blame but herself. Back at the farm, Saturday was packed with activity. Kel spent the morning teaching Chloe and Sophie how to ride the small motorcycles parked out by the shed. They were naturals. Confident, fearless. After 2 hours, Kel laughed and called it. "You'll be sore tomorrow if you keep going. Go cool off in the pond while the sun's still up." Meanwhile, Nora and Leah were growing closer, laughing in the kitchen, swapping recipes, peeling vegetables and prepping dinner like they'd known each other forever. Around 4, the girls were called inside to help. I peeked in to find them gathered around the table, peeling potatoes and slicing onions while Nora gave gentle instructions. I grabbed the steaks and joined Cal at the grill. We ate outside: steak, baked beans, potato salad, all spread across a weathered picnic table under fading sunlight. No phones, no TV. The girls didn't miss either. They were discovering something new, a simpler life, filled with people who saw them, listened to them, and wanted them close. By evening, they were ready for bed, exhausted from all the fun. The rest of us stayed up a little longer, enjoying a few beers and an old deck of cards before calling it a night. On Sunday, after lunch, Leah and the girls got ready to head home. Before they left, Leah handed me a signed and witnessed letter, official documentation granting Frank and Nora temporary custody of the twins. Early Monday morning, Frank called to thank me. He'd already submitted the letter to the appropriate office, where it was copied and filed. The state had issued a legal notice confirming temporary custodianship to the girls' grandparents. As we chatted, Frank opened up about Tessa and Zane's relationship, things I hadn't known. Turns out, their history went back even further than I thought. Meanwhile, on Friday morning, Zane Holloway had been served in Austin, Texas, while picking up a shipment of medical equipment. Tessa was served at the social services office around the same time. That afternoon, Leah texted me out of the blue. "What's your waist size?" I replied with a confused, "Why?" "So we can all go swimming when we come back." "You'll need trunks, genius." I smiled and replied, 34. Later that day, while out walking, I got a message from Tessa. "Have you calmed down enough to talk?" I didn't hold back. "Nothing to talk about. Your parents and Leah filled me in, from sneaking out to meet Zane when you were teens, to where you are now. What I still can't figure out is this. If he was always the one, why'd you marry me?" She didn't reply. When Leah returned with the girls, their excitement was contagious. Chloe and Sophie ran straight into my arms, giggling as they hugged me like they hadn't seen me in months. Behind them, Leah stepped out, radiant. The kind of beauty that isn't just physical, but felt, warm, grounded, real. She pulled me into a hug, then surprised me with a soft, but deliberate kiss. It caught me completely off guard. Still stunned, I whispered, "You need to hear what the girls just asked." She slid her hand into mine, and we turned toward them. Sophie stepped forward, a little shy but smiling. "We were wondering," she said, "if it's okay to call you Grandpa and Grandma?" Chloe chimed in right after. "Only if that's okay with you, of course." Nora's eyes filled instantly. "Of course, sweetheart," she said, voice trembling. "We'd be honored." And just like that, the broken pieces of our lives began to stitch into something new, stronger, simpler, and real. Later that night, Nora pulled me aside, her eyes soft with emotion. "I never thought I'd hear someone call me Grandma," she admitted. "I always hoped, but we couldn't have children of our own. I'd accepted that dream was gone." Her voice cracked just slightly, and I could tell how much those simple words meant to her. After dinner, I updated Leah on the legal front. "It's official, both Tessa and Zane have been served." I showed her Tessa's last message and my response. "She can't justify what she's done," Leah said. "If she even tried, she'd have to look in the mirror. And I don't think she's capable of that kind of honesty." I nodded, but smiled faintly. "Enough about your sister. When are you going to find someone who actually sees your worth?" "Don't act surprised," she replied, smiling knowingly. "I already have. The real challenge is getting him to see it." The next morning, Cal and I sat on the porch, sipping coffee while the sun rose. "Dylan," he said slowly, "Nora is my second wife. My first did to me what Tessa's done to you." "Why are you telling me this?" I asked. "Because I want to make sure you don't let pain blind you to what's right in front of you. Leah's been here from the beginning. Ask yourself why." His words stuck with me. Could Leah want more? And if so, why now? "What made you realize Nora was interested in you?" I asked. Cal chuckled. "A cast iron skillet to the head, figuratively, of course. She caught some neighbor girl flirting with me and made it real clear how she felt." He smiled at the memory. "We couldn't have kids, so we fostered. It gave us purpose, and it gave us each other." His story stayed with me as we watched the sunrise. The sound of the household waking up soon followed, and with it, another full day. After 3 more hours of motorcycle riding, the twins were drenched in sweat and ready to cool off. We grabbed towels and headed to the pond. Cal and Nora set up lawn chairs nearby, cheering us on during a lively game of beach ball volleyball. Leah looked incredible in a white bikini, her auburn hair pinned back, her confidence effortless. Watching her laugh, move, chase the ball with ease, I couldn't help but notice how beautiful she truly was. Cal's words echoed in my head. The pond was deeper than I remembered, fed by a small creek and framed by a makeshift waterfall Cal had built using old railroad ties. The game turned playful quickly. Chloe and Sophie took turns diving from my shoulders while Leah and I switched teams, tossing the ball and laughing nonstop. Eventually, Cal and Nora headed back to prep dinner, and the twins followed. Leah and I stayed behind, soaking in the peace. Feeling mischievous, I dove under the water and surfaced between her legs, flipping her with a splash. She came up laughing, hair soaked and eyes shining. She swam closer, and when our eyes met, something shifted. There was depth there. Longing. Unspoken truth. Without a word, we leaned into each other. Our lips met in a kiss that was electric, more intense, more real than anything I'd felt in years. "Wow," I murmured as we pulled apart, breathless. "You don't know how long I've waited for that," she said, her voice low and sure. We held each other, kissing again, letting the moment carry us until Cal's voice echoed from across the yard. Supper in 20 minutes. Reluctantly, we waded back to shore and made our way inside to change. Nora gave us a knowing look the moment we walked in. "Well," she said with a grin, "looks like things are finally falling into place." "How'd you clue him in?" she asked Leah. "I didn't," Leah replied, laughing. Cal stepped in. "I did. Told him about your legendary frying pan swing." The twins overheard and demanded the story. Kel told it with dramatic flair, leaving them in stitches. That night, after the girls had gone to bed, I found myself on the porch swing, soaking in the stillness. Leah joined me quietly, leaning against my shoulder. I wrapped an arm around her. My mom figured it out last week, she said. When I brought the twins home, she said I looked happier than I had in years. So much for hiding it. How'd she take it? I asked, knowing her mom could be tough. She asked if anything had happened yet. I told her no. Then she asked how long I'd been in love with you. Leah looked up at me, her eyes soft. I told her, since the summer before you married Tessa. I was stunned. That long? And it took this for me to finally notice. I was bracing for a lecture, Leah said with a chuckle. But instead, she said if it works out, she'll help Dad come around. She smiled and added, she told me something I never knew. My dad? He was once in love with her sister. Said losing her was the best thing that ever happened to him. Sunday morning came too fast. As Leah kissed me goodbye, Sophie leaned over and whispered to Chloe. Aunt Leah's been in love with Dad for years. Chloe blinked. Really? Yep, Sophie whispered. It took what Mom did for him to finally see it. She added, grinning, if Aunt Leah gets her way, they'll be married the minute the divorce is final. As they drove off, I stood on the porch, smiling. Somehow, my daughter had seen what I hadn't for years. Monday morning, Cal suggested a walk. We crossed a small bridge over the creek, into a section of land that overlooked the property. This would be a great spot for a house, he said. That way Chloe and Sophie can come over whenever they want. Ride the bikes. Or the horses Nora and I are planning to get. Whose idea was this? I asked. Nora and Leah's, he replied, grinning. They're planning to pitch it to you next week. Later that morning, Frank called with some difficult news. Grant Holloway had successfully obtained a court order for blood testing to determine the girl's paternity. I hate that it's come to this, Frank admitted. I was devastated to learn there was any doubt. I understood. So was I. But we were past the point of hoping. It was time for answers, no matter how painful they might be. He believed the affair with Zane had only lasted 3 years. So when Frank found out the truth, that it went back much further, he stormed into the social services office and confronted Tessa in front of her coworkers. As far as I'm concerned, you're dead to me, he declared, his voice carrying across the building. Later that day, Diana, my mother-in-law, called with an update. Miss Shaw had provided my lawyer with a notarized statement. She also mentioned that Zane was expected back in town by Wednesday and strongly recommended I stay nearby to keep watch. I took her advice. I arranged a crash at Mike Landry's place Tuesday night. Cal lent me his truck so I could move around unnoticed. As the sun dipped low, I called Mike to make sure he was home, then pulled into his driveway. He welcomed me with a firm handshake and a knowing look. Things have escalated, he said, wasting no time. Apparently, Tessa hadn't been alone since I left. She'd had another guest in the house, and he was there right now. Mike handed me his binoculars. I focused on the bedroom window and immediately recognized the man. Evan. Zane's older, married brother. I called Grant Holloway and asked him to come to the address. When he arrived, I handed him my spare house key. You need to see this for yourself, I told him. You won't believe what I've uncovered. I explained that I'd finally figured out who filmed the video of Zane and Tessa. It was Evan. And at that very moment, Evan was upstairs in the third-floor bedroom with Tessa. Mike and I watched from across the street as Grant walked up, unlocked the door, and went inside. What do you think he'll do? Mike asked, tense. Grant is a proud man, I said quietly. And pride's a dangerous thing. Depends which way it breaks. Moments later, the sound of a gunshot rang out. Mike immediately grabbed his phone and called emergency services. When the police, fire, and ambulance arrived, we saw Tessa stumble out of the house, half-dressed, disoriented, and Evan was led away in handcuffs. The tone shifted fast when paramedics carried Grant out on a stretcher. Mike flipped on the police scanner. Turns out, Grant had entered the third-floor room and startled Evan, who'd mistaken him for an intruder and pulled the trigger. Thankfully, the bullet only struck Grant's shoulder serious, but not life-threatening. Tessa, now fully clothed, locked eyes with me from across the street. Her face drained of all color. She was sleeping with both brothers? Mike muttered in disbelief. I nodded grimly. I had suspicions, but not about Evan. I feel for Grant, Mike added. He didn't deserve this. The next morning, I visited Frank and Diana. Over coffee, I told them everything: Grant's shooting, Evan's arrest, and the fallout. Diana sat silently, stunned, but offered nothing but warmth. When Chloe and Sophie came downstairs and saw me, they ran over with joy in their eyes. After I dropped them off at school, Diana and I talked quietly in the kitchen. We both admitted what had become painfully obvious. Tessa had never truly loved me. Later that day, I visited Grant in the hospital. His wife greeted me with a tearful hug. "This isn't on you," I said gently. "You're not responsible for your children's choices." Grant managed a faint smile. "You've always had a cool head, Dylan." "I try," I said, then paused. "But if I ever lost it, I don't think I'd stop." He chuckled. "Well, Evan's in jail. Zane's lost everything. The rest is just cleanup. Any interest in managing the fleet again?" I thanked him but declined. "I'm done with that chapter. I've got something new on the horizon." At the transportation yard, I watched as Zane clocked out for the last time. As expected, he left in a fury, slamming doors, throwing punches at the air. Worried, I asked Mike to keep an eye on the house. That evening, I surprised Leah with a bouquet of roses and asked her out to dinner. Her emotional reaction said everything. It was more than gratitude. It was love, plain and unguarded. But later that night, Mike called with urgency in his voice. "Zane's back," he said. "He's drunk. He's armed. And he's yelling at Tessa." Neighbors reported hearing shouting, then gunshots. By the time the police arrived, Tessa was critically wounded. She'd suffered internal injuries. Despite surgery, she didn't survive. I broke the news to Leah. She called her parents, and we met them at the hospital. The hardest part was telling Chloe and Sophie. Frank and I agreed to hold a closed casket funeral. As we planned the service, I couldn't help reflecting on how Tessa's choices had left a trail of destruction no one could have anticipated. After the burial, Frank pulled me aside. "I had the girls tested," he said. "They're not related to Grant." Then he gave me a look. "How long has Leah loved you?" I paused. "Since the summer before Tessa and I married," I admitted. Frank gave a faint smile. "Tessa throwing you away was the best thing she ever did." Then he added, "If you and Leah make this work, you'll always have our support." That moment marked the true beginning of my new life. 5 years later, I watched Chloe and Sophie wait for the school bus while Leah, now my wife, wrangled our 2 preschool-age sons inside for breakfast. Cal and Nora had become full-fledged grandparents. Our gas station and store had grown into the heartbeat of the small community that had blossomed around us. We even had a post office now. On warm mornings, I'd walk from our house by the pond to the store, soaking in the quiet peace of what we'd built. Evan and his wife visited often. He'd served a short sentence. Zane, however, was in prison for manslaughter. His ex-wife and kids had moved to our village, starting fresh, free from the chaos he left behind. The town finally got a name, too, one that stuck. Cal had painted a sign years back. "We're all here because of circumstances." It was true then, and it's still true now.